Hello and welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan. With me, as always, is Logan. Harry Tay Logan.
Jordan, you asking me how I'm doing today because you assume I'm doing bad? Like, is that what you're assuming right now?
I'm sorry, that was a terrible question. I
Yeah, that's an awful
apologize.
question. Don't ask that ever again. Let's
Sorry, I
move
just
on.
thought the listeners wanted to know how you were doing.
I am good, Jordan. A lot better than the media is doing these days. But I guess we are media technically. But um, gosh, man, it's been a brutal couple of days for. I was just listening to NBA talk, and the Nuggets coach went off on media.
Oh
Caleb
yeah, I saw
Porter
that
had
too.
his
I was like,
son.
it's
Like,
an epidemic.
I feel like this is just a bad stretch. Don't ask coaches questions.
That's why I don't ever want to go to those things. That's like why I never ask a question. I'm like, I just know it's going to be the one time where the person has like the shittiest attitude. And I'll be like, all right, probably never ever speaking up again in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the question I asked Nico, I was like, yeah, I feel pretty safe about that one. I don't usually try to get into performance stuff because I get why media ask. They got to ask the tough questions, keep people accountable. But then I'm also like, as a fan, I could have told you how he felt about it, how he felt about the red card early on. I could have told you that. He just wanted to
Yeah.
hear it from you, I guess.
Well, and I think part of it is you want the quote to back up what you're
That's
writing.
true.
And, or you're hoping for a bit of different insight on what he was thinking. If you don't know what we're talking about, of course, we kind of launched right into this. Uh, we're making fun of the Caleb Porter stuff. So if you didn't see this, he got asked uh, by a
Sam
reporter,
Minton,
Sam
yeah.
Minton. Yep, friend of the pod. I mean, he's liked some of our stuff. We've liked some of his stuff. But Sam asked him a very fair question about player personnel. It was Romney.
Romney,
Why isn't
yeah.
Romney playing? And Caleb took it the wrong way, and it sounds like he does that all the time. So, sometimes it gets highlighted more on what team they're on. Like I saw somebody mention what they asked him when he was in Columbus, and he gave a similarly crappy response. But I feel like that didn't get as much play as when you're on getting a Revs answer, right? Maybe it's the people we follow. Maybe the Revs have better media. I think they do have more like consistent local
Yeah, they
coverage
do.
that spread out and we follow and stuff. So it kind of took off a bit more, I think. Um, but it was this response of pretty much like, so you're asking a lineup question, like why is it? What you want to know the lineup? Do you want to make the lineup? Who do you want to make the lineup? The kind of thing from Caleb Porter, and it's just like I know you just lost a game. And I know you just lost it because it was our team that did it. Uh, but I know you just lost the game, but I don't understand how they can be so unprofessional after hitting the podium. And this goes to players too. There's a lot of players that'll do this type of stuff too. But in this league specifically, we don't see it that often compared to, like you said, NBA, NFL, baseball, MLB, where I feel like those reporters um, because they usually ask the tougher questions, will get pushback from the managers a lot more. MLS doesn't usually see that. And it's a fair question. Hey, this guy hasn't played in a while. You're leaking goals. Why? Why? What does he got to do to get in the team? Is pretty much the question. What does he got to do to get back in this team? And Caleb Porter had no real answer for that. His answer was the two guys they have right now are doing great. Like shipping 7 goals in 2 games is great. Like that type of thing. And it just doesn't really make any sense to me. And then we saw the other clip later, right? Which was him talking about, when he was asked about kind of pressure himself and the team, he kind of started shifting blame to the player that got sent off and saying, well, it was one person's mistake. It wasn't my mistake. It wasn't the team's mistake, right? It was one person's mistake, and pretty much throwing a player under the bus, which is never Never a great move. There's been reports out there that there was infighting, stuff going on in the locker room. Mark Anthony Kay's come out and said that wasn't true, but I feel like sometimes you
You
just
got to say that.
gotta say that stuff.
What do you
But
want him to say? Yeah, we're fighting in the locker room. It's getting
yeah,
ugly.
so I don't know. Like to me, this seems like it is unraveling at a high level. There was a report out there. I think it was that report that said that Caleb Porter kind of blew off Kraft, Jonathan
Yeah.
Kraft, and that's not going to go well, right? I mean, like we might literally see him be a 1-year coach if he makes it the full season of the Revolution. And it sounds like he's had this problem at every stop. I don't remember him doing this that much in Portland, but they were very good then. So I don't know if they really faced that type of questions, right? Like if he really faced those type of questions, because in maybe at the tail end of his time in Portland, but I don't recall any of that. But if people want to send us that stuff or send us screenshots of that, I would actually really like to see that. Um, but it just does seem like it's all unraveling pretty quickly, and it did so in Columbus as well. After he won MLS Cup, he was out the next year, right? Uh, and we were shocked by that, but now I'm maybe retroactively not as shocked.
Yeah, I think the thing that stuck out to me too in the comment back and forth with Sam was I found it interesting that he kept saying, "What is that? What they're saying? Is that what the fans are saying? Why do you care what the fans are?" Like obviously he's heard this rhetoric that he's not playing the players that necessarily the fans think should and deserve some playing time, and I think Caleb just addressing the fact that like, where are you getting this information from? How dare you come in here and question anything that I do? And it looked very pompous. Like it looks and sounds pompous. And then there's multiple videos earlier in the year when he's asked about just kind of how he's performed earlier in the year, and he's like, that's there's a lot of problems here. There's issues of basically like, these aren't my players. They're making mistakes. I make mistakes, but my team's good. And he keeps going back and forth on this idea of like, we're making mistakes, and I don't have the talent I want, and I don't have the roster I want, and poor Caleb. And then he turns around and goes, well, my team's good and we've got some good players, but they got to step up. And he kind of backtracks on everything that he says. So this smells of just issues and like you said, I think it's a higher level. I think it's all of that. It's ownership. The Crafts have had issues with the Patriots and Bill Belichick. The Crafts have had now issues with Bruce Arena, and now you put Caleb Porter on this list. The list goes on and on. Tom Brady. Like, it seems like the Kraft ownership and the Crafts are not necessarily the people you'd want to work for, which doesn't shock me, just based off of everything you've heard of the Crafts. So it'll be interesting, Jordan, to see how kind of this shakes out. But they're wooden spoon contenders. I think they're going to win the wooden spoon. I think the players will get
Right.
frustrated. It sounds like they'll give up. The locker room sounds like a mess. Once you start to get these reports out, somebody's leaking this information to agents. So I think it's 100% happening. And again, they're going to be like, well, the player said it's not. The players are always going to tell you that, and so the coaches, so is ownership. Again, people always want these people to come out and say, and hell, Caleb kind of did, letting you know that there are problems, which is kind of shocking because the approach has always been from coaches. I'm not going to comment on that, but he decided to go full blown into a rant because he was pissed.
The way he said, like, is that what the
The stat,
fans say? Is
yeah,
that what the fans think?
yeah,
Was like, it almost felt like putting the fans down. Like, oh, they're not knowledgeable. So, like,
yeah.
is that what they're thinking? Is that where you're getting your question from? Yeah. I mean,
He
they got
didn't show up for
7.
his radio appearance either. He had a
Oh,
radio
did he
appearance
not?
today. He did not.
7 points. And here's the thing too. I can't put it on ownership as much as I put it on Caleb Porter. Um, this team was good last year. Pretty much the same team was good last year. And you would think that should translate. New coach. There was no new coach bump. It's been a new coach hill. Going down the hill. Free fall is what the Revolution are currently seeing. And they mentioned it on, I believe it was the wrap up show, or maybe it was actually on the commentary. but like this was a matchup between two playoff teams last year in the playoffs, the Revs and Philly. And I mean, I think the Revs are like the furthest thing from a playoff team you can be. They're 10 points back, which is the furthest back you can be. But um, I don't think anybody really saw this coming going into this season because the Revolution, like I said, were good last year. And really it started to unravel under the Bruce thing. But that's why I can't really say anything other than it has to be some sort of coaching issue or a leadership issue where he's not somebody that the players are really rallying behind. We kind of saw it with Toronto last year when some of those star players were just totally done with Bob and the results weren't there. But now they got a new manager who's got them bought in and the results are there, right? Like, so sometimes it's not even probably something that you could say would be like a tactical issue. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the starting 11. But you would think with how many goals they've given up, how many few points they have, that he would be maybe making some changes. And it doesn't seem like he's willing to do that. I don't know what else to really say about this, but this team is just bad right now, and I don't think this team is as bad as they look. It's just I don't think that he inspires any sort of confidence in the players. I mean, there was this whole report again out here about um, one of the players not shaking his hand, Nick Lima, right? And he blew up on Nick Lima about it, and it's like what? Like, why are you that worried about somebody shaking your hand when you come off the bench? I know sometimes we focus on that stuff a little too much on like, oh, what was that reaction? But it just seemed and it wasn't intentional according to Nick Lima, if the report is to be believed. And that was I think reported by Tommy Quinlan, who usually is not like making stuff up. So I totally think that like you said, when Mark Anthony K is saying that that's not true, that you know he might be not telling the truth there.
Yeah, I suppose he got into it with Lima in the 83rd minute in the tunnel. And then this is the second week, I suppose it's happened because I mean, that's what Tommy tweeted. And then also, I had tweeted earlier in the day that Alejandro Bedoya and Carlos Heel had a conversation, I think on the pitch. And you can see Carlos Heel talking about how bad they are at form or something, or somebody had heard
Really?
them and yeah, so supposedly it's gotten. I mean, it's to a point where I think the players have given up. And when players give up, when you lose a locker room, you lose the team, and they won't play well. They just won't. Like, what motivation do they have to keep Caleb Porter around? And they're not firing off these players. It's not like they can sell all these players. It's the same thing that you have when you have guaranteed contracts, where these players are going to get paid no matter what, and the coach is the one that you can get rid of. So that's going to
Well,
happen, and we'll
we've
see.
seen a coach get fired this season right now, right?
Right.
Gary Smith is out. We'll get to that topic. But what I wanted to ask you is when it looks like this, if all this stuff is true, how long do you wait? You're only I know I said the farthest thing out from a playoff team at 10 points, but 10 points is actually not that much, right? You win 3 games and you got 9 points. When do you pull the plug and say, we got to just get somebody else in here and maybe get a little bit of a new manager bump? I know, or like we need to get something. We need to find something that can galvanize us because we've lost control since Bruce left.
I
Is
mean,
it
I think
possible they even go back and get Bruce?
I think at this point the pride would not be hurt any. But again, I think now I don't think you can wait any longer. We're about halfway through the season, and once it becomes, they've actually played 12 games, so they've actually got 2 games pretty much on hand. Some of the teams have played 13, but still they're within, like you said, they're within striking distance. And it's not like this team has gone completely talentless. I mean, this is, like you said, this was one of the best teams last year, the best team at one point. And I think they have the pieces left, and then the summer transfer window is coming up, so they have the ability to retool some here. And I think just the right coach in the right situation can at least get this team back up into like the playoff hunt. So I'd say right now you'd have to make the decision, and it might be coming. I mean, we might get the announcement tomorrow. It seems to be how this trend works with us. Is we will we will cover it, and then the next day we'll wake up to Caleb Porter's been released by the New England Revolution, or like an hour after we get done recording today, he'll be gone. But yeah, I think you got to make the choice right now.
Well, there you go. In Logan's opinion, Porter out.
Gone.
I do probably agree that it, and again, I have to stipulate that if this stuff is all true, and if the stuff between Kraft and him are true, right? Then how do you repair this? You can't. It's just time to move on. It's like, whatever. You're throwing a fit at the podium, like you're gone. That's how it
I
should be.
just I picture like Caleb Porter in like the janitor closet hiding
They're
from the
like,
meeting.
Caleb, you got that radio appearance. Where are you? Where are you? And he's like hiding.
He's like, I had to leave. My kid got sick. I have to go pick him up. I'm not at the stadium. Caleb, the radio frequency wouldn't pick up that far away from the stadium. Where are you? It says you're
Yeah.
located in the office.
Yeah, you got your Find Your iPhone on. We found you. You're right here. Crazy. Okay. I think that'll be our Revs talk. But you're right. They are leading the wooden spoon race with the worst 0.58 points per game and negative 16 goal differential. Also near that bottom of the team is also near that trophy is Chicago Fire and San Jose. Both of them very familiar with the wooden spoon. So they're praying. They're praying the Revs hold on to Porter. They're like, please do not let us get another wooden spoon. All right. Let's take a look at maybe which teams are hot and which teams are not. Logan, I'll let you kind of lead this segment. Maybe a little change of pace here.
Yeah. So I actually found a really interesting guide on MLS. If you go to MLS and you hit the standings, third tab over, they actually have a form guide, Jordan, and
Yes.
FBref has had this forever. But I actually like the way that this is all set up because I can see every single one of their matches with every single team, and it fluctuates based on the
Ooh.
ranking in which they sit. And then you can kind of hover over. What I really like is you can hover over it. It tells you the date, tells you the score, even bigger. So I don't know. I really like this. It was very for my eye, it was easier to see, okay, who's actually informed, who's actually not. And then as you start to scroll down, you can really start to see teams. So the black notches on the sheet here actually indicate who are the hot teams and who are not. You can tell just by the coloring of it who, you can just look at this and go, wow, this team's really struggling. I think one of the most interesting that I thought, Jordan, which I guess we've kind of alluded to it, but we haven't really talked a whole lot about it. The one that bumps up and kind of bumps out to me is NYCFC.
Yeah.
It's a lot of black lately. I mean, it's a lot of inform wins, and it's a lot of, 2-0, 2-0, 2-1, and then they lose 3-2, 2-1, 2-1. So they're scoring goals. They're in great form. And I mean, from a pretty bad start, Jordan, because they went a stretch there where they lost four, drew two and won one. I mean, they've been on a streak now where they've won six and lost one. So
Well,
I
yeah,
really
here.
want to turn around.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, right, they had one win through April 6th. We're at
Mm-hmm.
May 20th. Since then, they've rattled off 6 more wins. Um, that's tough. And two of those were on the road when they beat Toronto and when they beat Philly. And a raccoon ran on the field and gave Philly the biggest highlight they've had all season. And then they just beat Red Bull at home. Well, one of their homes, Citi Field.
One of their many.
uh,
Um,
but yeah, I mean, it is kind of tough to tell right now if this team is as good as they're starting to look, right? Because when you look at kind of who they're playing, right? For some of
mhm.
this stuff, you're like, ooh, not a like okay, yeah. But Charlotte's been good, DC's been good, Toronto's been good recently. They've beat Toronto twice already on this season, and Red Bull New York, have been quote unquote good. Um, they've lost to teams like Cincy, Portland. That was when Portland was good, right? They lost to St. Louis, lost to Charlotte once, tied with Miami, and tied with Atlanta. And they just recently lost to Colorado on May 5th. other than that, that was their first loss since March 23rd, by the way. So they went a whole month and a week or so without losing a game. But yeah, they are what you would call the very definition of hot. And guess what? They're looking at their schedule and they are salivating because they face the New England Revolution this weekend. Then they face the Quakes. So they might be able to rattle off 2 more wins here and have 5 in a row and have like what is that? 8 out of their last 9. That'd be pretty impressive.
Hmm. Yeah, Cincinnati's rattled off 6 straight, and we knew they were hot. I mean, going into it, I felt like Cincinnati was the best team besides Miami. Miami, obviously, very warm. But then I do. I just like the way that this is set up. I just want to bring people's attention because this is the first time I had ever seen the form guide, and it does. It really shows an indication of teams that are really hot and teams that have just really struggled. I mean, if you're a Portland fan or a Dallas fan, SKC, San Jose, New England, Chicago, I'd ignore it. It's not a fun one to look at. But yeah, Jordan, I think you can really, and as the season progresses through, as we get closer and closer to the 20 marks and the midway point at 17 weeks, you're really starting to see teams come into form and teams that kind of dip. And I'm kind of shocked how bad the Galaxy have been lately. A lot of draws, a loss. They haven't won a game since their win over the Quakes back on April 22nd, which is a team that we were giving high praise of how they started the season. Austin has kind of turned it around and have looked a lot better. Red Bull have really struggled lately, but this is just a really good indication. I think if you're a fan wondering what other teams look like and how they've been playing, if they're leading up to your game, I think this is a really good indicator. And so I just thought it'd be a fun little segment because, again, I had no idea this existed because FBref only goes, I think, 5 deep in form guide. So,
Yeah, this is great. This is the full season
mm-hmm,
that you can look at here. So obviously the worst form right now is the Revs, right?
mm-hmm.
Or I guess maybe not right now because they did beat the Fire.
I guess
So
the
who?
Fire,
Yeah, the Fire, SKC,
Montreal.
Montreal. They all have 4 losses in a row. So definitely not a great run by either of those teams currently. There was that stretch for the Union that was pretty brutal. They just bounced back against the Revs. Easy bounce back game, unless you're Chicago, I guess.
Yeah,
um, like you said, LA, Galaxy 4 straight draws. They haven't won a game since April 22nd. We're going on a month here of no win, and that was a scary game for them against San Jose Earthquakes, where they almost blew that one. They won that one
yeah.
4-3. And then, of course, before that, they had their win against the Vancouver Whitecaps. Let's take a look at Vancouver, though, because they've been struggling a lot
Mm-hmm.
lately, right? I mean, they have 3 draws and 2 losses in their last 5 matches. They haven't won a game since around the same time the Galaxy, 421, when they beat Seattle um, about a month ago. Logan, that's so long ago. That's before you even came up here to visit.
Yeah, that was way back when we thought the Union were actually a good soccer team.
Yeah. They were points per game. They were in the
Yeah.
top 4, right?
They were
not,
not mid
not
at
so
this
much
point.
now.
No. But yeah, no, Charlotte, they've turned it around. I mean, it really is a fun graph to look at just because it's so much easier on the eye to go, oh, okay, wow, this team's really struggling. Especially, people that cover the league or don't necessarily pay attention to the whole league and want to know more about the whole league. This lays it out perfectly, I think.
All right, let's go to Atlanta. What are our thoughts on Atlanta this season so far? I think we can all agree they've been a disappointment. They're averaging 1 point per game. They're in 12th place in the East, 13 points, 4 points back of a playoff spot. They've fallen from playoff spot to out of a playoff spot. So much so that if you want to call local rivals, Orlando has leapfrogged them all the way up to 10th place and 3 points above them currently in the standings. Uh, how long of a leash does Pineda have? Does he see out the season, or what?
He's one that's in a position, I think, a little bit different than the coaches that have, like a Caleb Porter. I think it's harder to fire a coach right away unless they have some huge issues and turbulence. I think people like Gary Smith and Gonzalo Pineda are those kind of coaches that you could possibly see on the out. And this team, Jordan, we talked about this before in our season preview, where we thought this team was, they were ready to take that next step. We just thought, can they take that next step under Pineda? And I know that was a huge question mark both you and I had. We knew that Garth Lagerwey was going to put a good product out on the field, but I think a lot of it has to do with just the system in which they play. Yakimakis hasn't been healthy the whole season. He's only played 9 matches. He does have 5 goals in those 9 matches. He scores when he plays, but again, I think some limited time there. Almada's not been like the crusader he has been. He's not been the top player in the league, which you could argue that he was one of the top players in the league last season. And he's not really fit into what Gonzalo Pineda needs this year. And I think more of that is just the idea that Almada's basically going, you know what, I don't really have much time left here because somebody's going to come hunting this summer for him. I think it was heavily rumored that he was going to leave in the winter. He didn't. So then they were stuck with him, and there's always that inevitable speak of he's going to be gone. But yeah, Jordan, I think that's it. I think Gonzalo Pineda is the issue. I think just the system in which they've run, I think they've just kind of run their course with what they've got and what they have as far as a head coach. And I think it's kind of time to make that change so that way you can get that change of scenery. And if Atlanta gets that bump, Jordan, then, you know, it looks a lot better for them. I mean, they're sitting currently in the 12th spot. They're in range of a playoff spot. They're only 4 points behind DC and a game in hand. So again, this is that, and I think this is where Nashville looked at it too and said, you know what, we've got a good team that we think can make the playoffs, or at least the remnants of a good team. So
Yeah, Gary Smith. He was there since they were in the USL, and he gets let go, and we'll see the impact on that. I mean, that they got a little bit of a bounce. They're only 2 points back at DC, 2 points above Atlanta. But yeah, Atlanta really struggling right now with Pineda, like you said. Almada, I would still think probably gone. I'm assuming he's going to maybe feature during the Copa America, and then he if he has a good tournament, he might be out right after that. Uh, we'll see. Austin, they've been a little bit of a surprise team. They're up to third place now, really sneak attacking us here. Where I think a few weeks ago they were in like 10th, right? And then as the weeks go by, they get higher and higher. They're now above the Galaxy with the same amount of games played. They're behind Minnesota, who has 2 games in hand, and they're like 6 points behind RSL, who is obviously tearing it up. But how good can this Austin team be? Do we think that top 4 in the West is actually a possibility for them?
yeah, I mean, I think it is just because I mean, we really do. We've got a very top heavy league right now. I mean, this is the first time I can remember covering MLS where it felt very top heavy. Like there's 3 or 4 teams that I would say, man, those are really good teams. After that, it dips quite a bit, or teams aren't in form and teams haven't come back up the table. We're in a really weird spot in the season. We're getting ready to head into the summer months, which is going to see a lot of players leave for international duty. Then Leagues Cup starts after they get back from internet. It's going to be a wild time for MLS coming up with Olympics and Copa and Euros. They've got all these players leaving. But I think you look at the Austin team and you look at, Sebastian Giroussi's got 5 goals in 11 matches. He's starting to look a lot better. Yadier Obrian is playing a lot better, 4 goals. Diego Rubio's got 3 goals. They're defending again. They had some major issues because of injury, and now they've got some of those defenders back or have replaced those defenders from last season where they really struggled, and they're taking advantage of what right now seems to be a very weak league. Again, I think there's a lot of teams that have kind of gone into this lull. I mean, you look at the informed teams that we talked about. I mean, there's 6 to 8 of them. The rest of them, man, they're just getting absolutely pummeled. So I don't know. I think we saw parity for so long, Jordan, that it's a little bit strange this season that we're getting a little less parity and we're getting a lot more. The heavy favorites are the heavy favorites right now, and that seems to be the way things are going. And I think Austin might be throwing their name into that mix just because of how solid they've been defensively and they've been able to score some goals and win at home, which they weren't doing last season either.
All right. Yeah, I don't know where I sit on Austin currently. I think they can be like top 6. That's where I'll go. I do think LA might rebound. Both LAs might rebound, and then you end up with those two in the top 4 instead. And there's also still the Rapids and Vancouver not far behind, but Vancouver has really fallen off lately, and we kind of talked about it recently, but just are you overall worried about Vancouver? You were their biggest defender going into the season. Like, what's your how's your scale? What scale should we make this? Like a 1 through 5, 5 being panic, 1 being I'm not worried about this at all, and 3 being maybe there's something here. Where are you at on there?
Um, I'd probably put it at a 6. I only say that just because of
Out
how
of 5?
highly.
I said out of 5.
Oh, out of 5. I
And
think you
you
said a
come
10.
out and say
Out of 6. Yeah. Okay. Out of 5. I thought
I
you
was like,
said
oh my
10.
god, it's like really worried.
I thought you said 10. Out of 5. Okay, then I'm gonna put it at a 2 then, 2 or 3. They've lost four. Sorry, they've played 4 games on the road. They've had to travel to Red Bull. They had to travel to LAFC. Had to travel to Colorado and travel to Seattle. Those are all really tough places to play. Like extremely tough. Like those are 4 stadiums that I would say if when Red Bull are good, Red Bull is hard to play in just because of how raucous their crowd is. LAFC is one of the best crowds in this league. Colorado is difficult to play in because of the high altitude, and Seattle always has a good fan base, no matter how bad they are. So those are really tough places to play. And then the one game that they played at home, they drew against Austin. I think the biggest thing I guess you're concerned about right now is the scoring. If Brian White's not scoring, who is kind of thing. And I think that's basically every team, right? I think if your striker is not scoring, then who is? If Julian Carranza is not scoring, then who is? The only team that really seems to have that luxury of guys just scoring all the time is Inter Miami because they've got 2 of them. So yeah, I think ultimately I would just say a 2 or 3, maybe 2.5, just because you're going to have these tough stretches, and at least they've gotten 3 points out of 5. Out of the 5 matches that they got, and that's not great, but it's definitely better than going on one of these stretches that some of these really poor teams have been in. So yeah, they need some wins, but I think their schedule gets easier after the Miami game that they have coming up this week. Because they do have SKC, Colorado, New England, Portland, Seattle, or St. Louis. So those are games that I think they'll be in at least after the Miami game. But like you said, Jordan, if we're sitting here and talking about this when they're done with that stretch, then they're in some major trouble because then we're starting to get into that 20th week where it's July starts to hit in that after break of Leagues Cup, or if you don't take a break in Leagues Cup because you keep winning in Leagues Cup. I mean, I think a lot has to do with how these teams prepare for that.
Yeah, so we take a break this year from looks like 721 to 824 for Leagues Cup this season. A little bit of a different time frame this year. Um, so they'll have a break from the Houston game to the LAFC game, a month long break. Of course, they'll be playing in Leagues Cup, so it's not like a full month long break. But we'll see how they do in that tournament. I will say I'm a little worried about them, but again, I mean, these slumps happen to teams in the league, right? Like we're talking about one of the hottest teams in the league, NYCFC, and they started off the season with 1 win in like 6 or 7 games, and now they sit third place in the East, less than 10 points off of Miami, and only 7 points off of Cincinnati. So I do want to preach that to people that this is a different beast, right? Like this league is different. This league isn't one of those that you look at Arsenal losing one game and you're like, well, the title city's now. Like
Yeah.
it's totally a different league and structure over here that because of the way that they do the playoffs and how many teams get in, even not even that, right? Because NYCFC literally jumped from like 12th
Hmm.
to third
Yeah.
over the span of like a month and a half. Sometimes you just go through those pitfalls, and it's all about when you face those teams, right? Like when you get to face those teams, and that's pretty much true for everybody except for pretty much Miami and Cincinnati, who I think are the two best teams in the East, and I don't think that any other team is particularly close to those two. And I think if you're looking at supporter shield, I think there's really only four options, and that's Miami, Cincinnati, RSL, and Minnesota. And I say Minnesota because of those two games in hand. If they had 24 points and they were at 14 games, I'd probably rule them out of the supporter shield. But for the supporter shield right now, yes, I would say it's those four teams. Did I say anything egregious there or anything you want to say?
No, I think you're right. I think those are. I Yeah, I would argue that. I'd even argue that Cincinnati and Miami might be the teams to beat in the whole league for the time being and onward, just because of Cincinnati's run last season, and they appear to be the same team, which is scary. And then Inter Miami again, it's just a buzzsaw. Like to face them when they're healthy, there's not a team in this league that can beat them. I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those are probably if those two get into the playoffs, which they will. But I mean, like you know, what I'm saying like in the playoffs, those are the two teams I really wouldn't want to face. RSL I'd put up there as well, though. I mean, they are
Mhm.
in a we're talking hot streak. They've gone unbeaten since March 10th. March 10th. That is, I believe, the longest streak of no wins. I mean, of no losses. Sorry, because Miami, the other another team with two losses, last lost on March 23rd, and Cincinnati, another team with two losses, lost last on April 13th. So we're talking about RSL is probably the hottest team in the league if you're looking at wins plus draws, and they have not lost since March 10th. So I do want to say I have to give props to RSL. I think that they've done it on the road. They've done it against good teams. They've done it against bad teams. They've done it so many different ways that I think I'm looking at them and saying, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to play them in MLS Cup final this year.
Yeah, no, no, especially if they somehow can wrangle the top spot. Although RSL's they're like they love the
Like I said,
road.
they
I
can do
don't
it
know
on the
what is.
road. So it's like,
I don't know what it is about the road, Jordan. We got to see it in person. Something magic happens
and
whenever they
even that
visit
game
places.
at Miami, week
Yeah.
one that they lost, remember they were
Yep.
playing very, very good. So if it's at Miami in an MLS Cup final, I still feel pretty good about RSL going up against them.
And they've got two top contributors, just like Miami do. Andre Gomez, and you've got Chicho, who leads the Golden Boot. Um, I mean, those two are just as threatening, if not more, because you're going to see them in more matches. So, again, this all hinges on Miami staying healthy, and that is a big if because once again they've got another injury that they're going to be missing one of their midfielders in Ferrier, or however you pronounce that. I never know how to. Is it Ferrari? Um, I'm gonna butcher it.
You know, I'm not good at that
I
either.
know that's why I
So
don't know.
it's
I don't know how to pronounce it. But let's try it again. Frieri, I think it is how you say it. And I think that feels right. But again, has started in 9 matches out of the 10 he's played. A good defender, and once again they lose another player, Jordan. And this is what you get with Miami. We've talked about this. You're going to get a lot of injuries. It tends to be a more experienced roster. I would argue that it's probably one of the most experienced rosters. I mean, those ages at the top really would drag that average up, just because of their top players. So be interesting. And you got Copa coming up, and a lot of these guys will go to Copa. Um, yeah, I'm interested to kind of see what happens. Just because they're just one again, just like every other team though, they're one injury away from really being a shadow.
All right, time for our weekly Portland check-in.
We
A
should have
mixed
like a
bag.
noise.
Mixed bag. 4-2 win against San Jose in the midweek. Then they lose against a good Minnesota team at Minnesota. But man, that win that they had against San Jose, Logan, was their first win since March 9th. Which, if people listen religiously, they know we highlighted that their first 2 wins of the season, and their only 2 wins of the season at that point, were in the first 3 weeks of the season. And that was it. Losses, 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 draw, 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 loss, 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 win midweek, and then loss. So they're still a good thing they won that midweek game, because if they hadn't, they would still be they would be bottom. They were bottom last time we talked with San Jose. They are now 11th place, right behind Seattle again. They're only 3 points out of a playoff spot. But I feel like at this point, this is just who they are. They're going to kind of hover around that playoff spot, and they're either going to make those play-in games or they're going to fall just short, is kind of where I'm vibing with Portland this season.
Jordan, do you think they break the record for the most goals allowed? The most goals allowed was allowed by San Jose, who gave up, or not San Jose, Cincinnati, who gave up 75 when we were
Right.
covering the league. They're at 29 right now. They've played 14 matches, so that gives them 20 matches left. Do you think it's possible? Like they're
No,
really bad.
I'm worried San Jose will. They're at 33.
I guess it's true. Montreal too's got 31.
Montreal's got 31, yeah.
They're just so bad defensively.
Yeah, not great, not great. Look, they're at least at a -3 goal differential, which is if you break the record in goals allowed. Let's say they did that, but they still finished with a -3 goal differential. Not bad, right? Not bad. I would still kind of side eye any of the teams that finished with a worse goal differential because in that case, then they're just not scoring, right? Because there's another team could give up the most ever and still have a higher goal differential than another team. So it does seem like they're scoring. They're just not able to stop the leaks, and we've seen that. There's games where they finish like 4-3, right? They're very high scoring games, 4-1, where they're either scoring a lot or they're conceding a lot, and that creates issues for them to be in that positive goal differential. And if they were, they would probably be a couple spots higher on the table, be in a playoff spot, and be challenging for a title by just in virtue of getting into the playoffs, is what I mean. A little more tougher this season with the -3 goal differential. We'll see. Like I said, there were years where playoff teams did have that negative goal differential. This year has not really seen that, though DC does have a -4, and they've conceded 24 goals, so they're still only like 5 less goals that they've conceded than Portland. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be too worried about them maybe breaking that record. I do think things will kind of even out for them. But I think they're just going to kind of be that 10th and 11th, 12th spot in the West, I think, is probably their ceiling. Or it's probably the floor, and the ceiling is probably 8th and 9th, I would say. Okay, how about Toronto? We didn't really talk much about Toronto lately, but they've been sneaking up that table. We had a hat trick by Bernadeschi. Goes out there and scores his, I believe, is the first hat trick he's had at Toronto. It may have been his first 3 goals. It feels like it's been a while since he was this effective. But yeah, they've had Toronto's big issue is that they've only drawn once, right? They have 6 losses, but have only drawn once. But they have 7 wins. 7 wins is second highest in the East, along with NYCFC. Miami and Cincinnati tied for first with 6. I mean, with 9. Sorry. So they're in it. They're actually only 1 point out of the top 4 spot, which would be great for them to be able to have that home playoff game. They hit a tough stretch where they had lost 2 in a row, and that was on the 11th and the 16th. So midweek they lost to Nashville. That was the I guess after Gary Smith was fired, right? Nashville had a little bump, and then they beat Montreal, who who doesn't right now, right? Like Montreal hasn't been great lately. They sit in 13th in the East. They've really been struggling. They've given up 31 goals, negative 14 goal differential. They're really struggling. They have a lot of off the field stuff with management. Not a great Montreal side, but Toronto does the business, right? Like that's still a worthy thing, right? Like you can be playing the worst team in the world. You still have to go out there and actually do it, right? You still have to actually go out there and win the game. And they did, and they won it handily. Great job, Toronto. Herdman has these players buying in when they weren't a year ago. What is your thoughts on Toronto? What's kind of their ceiling this season when we look at standings?
I mean, I think the way the East is going, I think the top 4 spots definitely in reach. Insigne's back. This team seems to have a whole different attitude on the way that they defend, the way that they're organized off, in the attack. They seem to be impossible, if not at least very difficult to beat at home. They've not lost yet, I guess. Wait, how did they do that? No, they have. Have they lost yet at home? They have, yes. I hate the way that they do the standings because one of them's like 5-2-0 and then FB Ref's like 5-0-2.
Yeah, FB Ref does uh, win, draw, loss,
Yeah.
and MLS for some reason does win, lose, draw, a draw.
Okay. So they've lost 2 at home, but I mean, they've won 5 at home. They protect their home very well. They're difficult to beat at BMO. And again, I think Insigne and Bernadeschi are the big differences, along with Herdman. So they're bought in. They have a slew of talent. I think they've got to defend a little bit better. Be one of those top teams defensively, and then you're writing a whole different story that they're, maybe third or fourth in behind NYC, or sorry, in behind NYCFC and Cincinnati. So I guess we'll see. See if it continues. I only worry about, again, health with them. Insigne seems to miss some games here and there. He did return to the starting lineup, so if he starts scoring like he had been before he got hurt, then I mean, this team is one of those teams that we thought could reach higher heights if John Herdman came in and coached like he did in Canada, and he has. So, and he's back with Canada. So this is great. This is a really nice turnaround.
All right. Well, we're running out of time here soon, and I did want to get to the U.S. men's national team roster that was released as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at what games are coming up this week. We have some Open Cup stuff. We have Charleston, the Battery, Logan's Battery, going up against Atlanta United. So they got a pretty good shot. That is at 7 o'clock tomorrow, Tuesday. Toronto will face San Laurent. What is that? What would that be? San Laurent? Laurent? It's French. It's Canadian in the Canadian Championship. NYCFC 2 versus New Mexico in the U.S. Open Cup. SKC and Tulsa at 8:30 in the Open Cup. Sacramento and San Jose at 10 o'clock. LAFC and Loudoun United in the Open Cup. Talk about a long trip. That's the closest that they could get? How come Loudoun is not drawn with NYCFC? Usually they like to do regional stuff. Making Loudoun go all the way to LA from Virginia? Whatever. Vancouver Calvary at 10:30 in the Canadian Championship. Wednesday, May 22nd, Indy 11 versus Detroit. Montreal and Forge FC in the Canadian Championship. Tampa Bay Rowdies and FC Dallas in the Open Cup. And Seattle and Phoenix Rising at 10:30 in the Open Cup. Then on Saturday we have at 7:30 these games: Atlanta LAFC, Charlotte Philadelphia, DC versus Chicago, Montreal facing off against Nashville, New England Revolution and NYCFC, Orlando facing off against Columbus, Toronto facing off against Cincinnati, and those are your 7:30s. Your 8:30, and this one is free, is Dallas RSL. Then St. Louis and Seattle. And then over at 9:30 we have Colorado Minnesota, that's also free. LA Galaxy and Houston at 10:30, Portland SKC, San Jose Austin, Vancouver Miami. And those are your games. Then we'll have more midweek action on the 29th. And wouldn't you know it, Logan, Miami will also play that midweek as well.
I'm telling you, they're going to play 38 games somehow. It's going to happen. I don't know how they keep playing all these games.
I don't know, because then they even play the following Saturday too.
What's
I
happening? Do
mean,
like the
I
last
don't know when they'll get the
3 weeks they're
break.
giving them the break so they can heal for the playoffs? Is that how MLS is
Maybe,
finagled this?
maybe,
Give them the last week bye so that they can be healthy for the playoffs.
maybe. Okay, well, your pick of the match of the week.
That's a good one. There's some interesting matchups, but not like great. You know what? I guess I'll go Vancouver and Miami. Just because Vancouver needs to at least get a point. They're at home. That's
Yeah,
very difficult to do against Miami. Maybe Mepsi won't play. Maybe one of them won't play. Maybe they'll all be hurt by then. I don't know. But yeah, Vancouver really needs to win. They need to start scoring goals. And what better place to do it than going back home to BC Place and doing so? So they'll need a Brian White brace at least, I think, to win this game.
sign me up for Toronto Cincinnati at 7:30. I think that one can be a
So that'd
lot
be
of
good.
fun. Runner up here, Colorado Minnesota. I think
Mm.
that looks a lot of fun as well.
Both hot.
Both actually, I mean, Colorado can be kind of cold at times. So
They've
can
won
Toronto.
5 of the last 7 or something like that.
No, I meant weather.
Oh, jeez. You're mean.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the June friendlies against Colombia and Brazil, and this is kind of the roster that might be going into Copa America here. Let it load for me. Okay. June training camp for Copa America. Ethan Horvath, Sean Johnson, and Matt Turner are your goalkeepers. Your defenders are Cameron Carter Vickers, Christopher Lund, Mark McKenzie, Shaq Moore, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson, and Joe Scally. Your midfielders are Tyler Adams, Johnny Cardoso, Luca Della Torre, Weston McKenney, Eunice Musa, Gio Reyna, Malik Tillman, and Timmy Tillman, the Tillman brothers. Your forwards are Brendan Aronson, Balagoon, Pepe, Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent, Timothy Weah, and Haji Wright. Your thoughts on this roster? I think it's a pretty okay roster, like what you would expect. Like I didn't really find many surprises.
Yeah, no, I think. I mean, really, you look at this team, and I think they are. It really helps when Pulisic's playing the way he's been playing, because he's the captain. I mean, Tyler Adams the captain, but I think Christian's the one they all look up to. He's part of that captain's table. Um, but yeah, I think this is a great roster. An interesting note, though, Jordan Greg Berhalter said that Haji Wright was selected more as a winger in this camp than he was as a straight out attacking player because he said the depth wasn't quite what he wants it to be, and the way that Haji moves is very winger like, and that he can still score his goals from that side. I kind of like it. I like what Greg does here because I think if you play Haji right and you throw somebody up there like a Pepe or a Balagoon or depending on who that is, Josh Sargent, I like having the ability to have 2 goal scorers along with Pulisic, and then with Reyna, Weston McKennie in there back behind him, Tyler Adams. give me more attack because that's where the team really has struggled, and we saw that with Gold Cup um, against Mexico, and I think that that's something that the U.S. has been dying for is to have some goal threats. So having two on the pitch at this time would be great, and I think that the way that maybe Sargent and um, Haji Wright have played, I think getting them on the pitch together might be actually a brilliant idea. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if Greg sticks to that. It'll be interesting to see if Haji Wright can adapt to that winger position.
Yeah, it sounds like he's been. Uh, from what I saw before, somebody said he was playing that for his club recently or something.
Yeah, He'd played some with Coventry on a wing.
Yeah, and he's been doing well there, so I think that makes sense. He threw out some options for right backs as well, right? Which is, um, I think they even said Musa could
I
potentially
could see
move
that.
into
Yeah,
that.
because he won't be in the midfield mix.
So that would be quite interesting to me. But
No
yeah, no,
Des.
I mean
So
this is a pretty set roster. They said Matt Turner's the number one. That makes sense, right? Like that's who we have right now. We have Turner, Sean Johnson, Ethan Horvath. It is telling that maybe without um,
Zach.
Zach Steffen, but it's not like Colorado. He's been lighting it up in Colorado or anything. So
This will be a great test, though, Jordan. I mean, these are two really good teams that they're going to be playing in
yeah, Colombia and Brazil
right,
right before you go into Copa.
fifth ranked team in Brazil in the international rankings, and then 12th, which is just above the United States for Colombia, and U.S. is 11th. So
And this
this
is
is
how
great.
you do. This is how you do want to do it when you're facing a team. When you're going to go into a tournament like Copa America, you want to face teams like the teams you're playing. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're playing against South American teams. You do friendlies against South American teams. They're also going to already be over here because we're getting ready to host this thing. So
Yeah,
they'll need the tune-ups as well. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Let's see how they do. Right, we got this coming up very soon, and then Copa America starts, and we will be, of course, following along with that and doing as much coverage of that as we can do. Colombia game is against Colombia. Obviously, I meant to say is in Landover, Maryland, on June 8th, and Brazil is the
in your own
Orlando
town,
game on
baby.
June 12th. So both of these in our backyards
Backyards,
here.
right?
Yeah.
They're literally playing in your backyard. Like you have to set up this field, don't you?
Yes. I am the ball boy. Actually, I'm going to be
Yeah,
tossing the ball back in
good,
behind my back.
right?
I got to pull Greg here,
Yeah, bounce
and
pass though.
I'm only going to do that for the U.S. teams. When Colombia wants the ball, I'm going to hide it. Shaq Moore might be the surprise, I guess, but he's consistently been called in.
And
Whatever.
been consistently good when he's been around, at least somewhat good. There's been games.
Yeah, and right now we don't have Dest, right? So I mean,
No.
you take what you can get. All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap us up. To do anything that I missed, or that like I know you have notes here. We didn't get to each thing. Was there anything on here that you did want to talk about before we hit the road?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. Like I don't think there was anything. We hit Gary Smith, so that's good.
Well,
We
we
didn't
didn't hit
hit
him.
him. No,
We didn't.
no, we didn't hit them.
We talked about him.
Right. I'm trying to think. Scrolling through, scrolling through, scrolling through.
Don't
No.
need Caleb Porter to be like, "Do you hear these guys? They're hitting coaches now."
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that'd be bad. No, I think we covered it all. So I'm just ready. No, Jordan, I'm excited about MLS in this season, but I'm very excited. I know you and I agree on this one, where some of our favorite memories and one of our favorite teams to root for in all of our sports is the U.S. men's national team. So looking forward to a
Yeah.
good tournament. I love that we get in one of these tournaments because I used to hate watching the Euros and Copa and go,
Having
this
nothing
is
to do.
boring. Yeah, like what do
You're
we
like,
do?
"Where's our Gold Cup at?"
Right. So this will be exciting because we'll get to see teams that we don't normally get to see. I always feel like in World Cup we always get stuck with one of the Middle East teams and then one of the Asian
European
teams or
teams,
European
yeah,
teams.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, this will be fun, especially because, like you said, sometimes those Copa games are not on a channel we have. Like there was
hmm
times where they were on like BN Sport, and I'm
yeah,
like, great, I don't even get BN Sport.
yeah,
These games, I think Fox has the Copa America rights. Like that sucks, but at least we can watch it, right? we'll
yeah.
we'll watch it and be very very excited. Hopefully a good tournament coming very soon for Copa America, and then we kind of go right into Leagues Cup. So I'm really looking forward to how that's going to go. But we'll have to plan a Copa America preview to get ourselves all primed and ready for it. But if you want to give us any sort of feedback to our show here, it's at Stateside Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads. You can reach us stateside at gmail.com. You can like and subscribe to us here on the YouTube channel, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps more people find the show. Have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next time when we talk these MLS matches and maybe look ahead to the summer that's upcoming.